Hello, it is good to have you with me today. We are doing an unusual live event today where we are doing questions and answers. So the questions we are going to be answering need to be focused on the business of iridology, how to learn iridology. We will not be answering client-specific questions or questions about what does this kind of a marking mean, because we can't answer those in isolation anyways. So I have a list of questions, some that have been sent in specifically for today, and some that I have accumulated over time. And so those of you who are joining me live, you have the extra added advantage of being able to send me questions through the chat box. So if you've got a question about the business of iridology, about learning iridology, shoot it to me in the chat box and we will include it in our conversation today. So good to have you with me, and thank you for making time to be with me. So today, I'm actually going to start with the most recent questions that have come in. I'm going to change the screen here. These are questions that were submitted to me through our dynamic iridology assessment system for health professionals Facebook group, and some really good ones here. So actually, they're all really good. My students will tell you how much I love questions, and I encourage my students to ask questions, and I'm perfectly humble enough to say when I don't know the answer, but I'm also willing to think things through. But for today, we're going to keep it to business and how to learn iridology. So Chana Claren has asked, how has doing iridology impacted your life? It's a really good question. Has it challenged, what beliefs has it challenged, made you dive deeper into any areas, something you hadn't expected from being an iridologist, anything? Ooh, well, I've been an iridologist for over 4 decades and certified for 30 plus years now, certified with the International Iridology Practitioners Association. And because I've studied under a couple of different styles of iridology and have finally, 30 years ago landed on the constitutional style as being my home, iridology has been a huge blessing for me in my practice. I'm also a master herbalist and a natural nutrition practitioner. So, and there's my iridology, my most recent certifications. IPA has us update our certs every 2 years. So I've just redone mine, and that's not where I wanted to be, but I'm also a master herbalist, like I said, and a natural nutrition practitioner. And so in all my years of being a practitioner, I needed a way to assess clients. And originally, with the original style of iridology I learned, which is affectionately known as the Jensenian style, I was taught to diagnose and prescribe. I was taught to give long lists of what I see in the eye, of the markers, everything they could possibly mean, and then long lists of what could possibly be the remedy here. And I was also taught that the eyes would change. That it didn't work out that way. Number one, it scared clients away to get long lists of what could possibly be wrong. And I was often wrong because they often didn't have any of the symptoms yet, because of course we now know that what we see in the eyes is inherent. And I also I would scare them away, give them the long lists, and they wouldn't know where to begin. And I didn't know how to coach them as to where to begin. The way iridology, particularly constitutional, has impacted my life is it has simplified the way I look at eyes, simplified it, but made it deeper. It's given me a structure so that when the client gives me a symptom and I look at the eyes, I can then follow the markings in the eyes, because I understand anatomy and physiology, and that's why I require my students to have A and P. I can follow the markings in their eyes to understand why they have this symptom. What's the root that would go through all of these steps to get to this symptom? And by understanding that pathway, I understand where we need to begin, what we need to do, what the foundation is of creating wellness for them. So iridology has simplified and clarified the work I do with my clients. It has made it easier for my clients to stick to programs and to get results, because we're able to laser in on the right thing. They might come in with, for example, let's say it's a menopausal woman coming in with hot flashes, and I look at her eyes and there might not be anything showing in, for example, the ovary or the pituitary or the thyroid, but there might be something showing in the pancreas. There might be something showing in the liver. And because I understand anatomy and physiology, I understand how those things could create hot flashes, right? So I am able to look at the root of that and say, well, here's what we need to do to help make the pancreas happy. Here's what we need to do to help the liver be happy. And as we do that, we get the end result we're looking for. So it's really helped me, rather than, as I say, vomiting everything all over my clients and them not knowing what to do. It's helped me to laser in. And that is beautiful, because the belief that it has challenged is that one symptom has one root cause. Any symptom can have any number of root causes. And I see that with eyes all the time. I might be working with 3 different women who have PCOS. They each have very different eyes, but understanding the physiology of PCOS and understanding the eyes, I can understand why they have PCOS, right? So it's given me, it's really helped to speed up the assessment process, helped in the client or the program creation process. And I really, really appreciate that. So, and I hadn't expected that, because my original training, like I said, was list every marking, every problem it could create, and every possible remedy, right? Which I'm not licensed to diagnose or prescribe. So that was walking on thin ice, right? And so moving into constitutional has really helped me to avoid diagnosing. It's helped me to avoid prescribing, but it's also given me that deeper understanding that helps me to be able to help my clients. Good questions, Chana. She does ask good questions. More here. How do you word information seen in the iris to your clients to help always remain a positive, even when you're talking to them of multiple nurture points? Okay, Monica, this is a really good question, because again, the original training I had in Jensen was very negative. It was very, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And it was not hopeful at all. What I find with doing constitutional iridology and understanding the pathway is I can simply say things like, I understand where this is coming from. Here are the things that we can do to begin correcting the physiology and the chemistry so that you can gain control of your health, right? So it's always about empowering. You're not looking in the eyes and saying, you have a weakness here, you have a weakness here, you have a weakness here, right? We look at the eyes and the client has symptom. We see the markings in the eyes and we say, this suggests a predisposition towards such and such, which is exactly backing up why you've got this symptom. When we see that predisposition, here are the things we need to work with in your diet, in your lifestyle, in your supplements. And again, we only give 2 or 3 recommendations at a time. Choose the 2 or 3 that are going to give you the best bang for the buck, get your client headed in the right direction. And once we've done that and they're starting to get results, then we can add to that to round out the program and make it a broader and more supportive of general health, as opposed to more supportive of actual individual health in an individual symptom. So I hope that makes sense. And that came from Monica Allen in the Facebook group. So Monica, I hope you see this replay. Okay, and so that's the questions that were submitted there. Now, the questions that were submitted live here, Veronica says, I want to learn how you do a client assessment. I like your critical thinking and thought process. Any tips for newbies, please, and thank you. Veronica, again, this is, in order to do a really good assessment, you need a couple of things, right? You've got to have the anatomy and physiology, which I know you've got. Veronica is a current student of mine, and it's so good to have her here. Hi, Veronica. And so you need the A and P, because then you need to be able to understand how things link together, not just where is the liver and what does it do, what are some of its functions, but how do those functions affect things? So liver processes carbs, and those carbs are used to make cholesterol. What is cholesterol used for? Right? You have to understand what cholesterol is used for to understand what role it's going to play, not just in cardiovascular disease, but in neurotransmitter and hormone functions, right? So we need to understand chains of events. You need to understand with liver phase 1 and phase 2 detox. Everyone says the liver is a filter. It's not a filter. It's a detoxifying organ, right? And so we need to understand these pathways. That's the first thing, so that when we're looking at an eye and we see different markings and we have our client's symptoms, we can begin to understand what those marking means about how that organ wants to function and how that organ's functions affect other organs that can create the symptoms we're seeing. So that's the first thing in doing the assessment. The second thing is ask questions, right? The eyes teach us what questions to ask. I cannot look at an eye and say, you have problem XYZ, but I can look at an eye and say, this eye suggests predispositions in this direction. And then I can ask questions so that I understand my client more fully. Beyond that, you need a modality. You need something like nutrition or herbology. Those two work really well. Homeopathy can work really well. Aromatherapy can work really well. So you need a modality, because telling a client why they've got a problem, which organs are affecting which other organs, is only useful if you know what to do with it, right? And so that's where having a modality is very, very beneficial. Hopefully that helps a little bit, Veronica. And again, in class, we practice more and more. And certainly one of the other benefits of the course itself is, Veronica, if you've got taken eye photos of a client or a family member and you want to practice an assessment, you can bring those into our private office hours meetings. And we can actually work through an assessment with you so that you can see how it works. Right? So remember to always do that. Trina says you have a way to take photos of clients' eyes online. How much is the camera used to take pictures? Okay, number one, you cannot take photos yet of a client's eyes virtually, because webcams don't have a high enough definition. You don't have control of the room lighting, really hard to get all the sclera angles. So you're not able to do that. In the scope of the dynamic iridology course, there are some tutorials. These are also on my YouTube site, how to get usable photos with a smartphone. Now, I will tell you that if you are taking the photos with a smartphone, you have much more control over it. It's still not quite as good as a professional setup, but it's usable. It's usable. And this is where we're starting these days with our clients, with our students rather, because, you know, once they've invested in the course, I want them to make sure that they love what they're doing and that they are comfortable with it before they invest in actual camera equipment for this. What I find, though, is that as a general rule, most of my clients who want to be virtual clients struggle to get photos of their eyes with a smartphone, because most of the time their phone is too far away. We're getting a lot of face, or they've done it from so far away, they've got both eyes. They're only doing frontal. We've got reflections of light and things all over the place that are obliterating parts of the iris, and they're not getting sclera photos because they don't have help to get the photos properly. So I'm going to suggest that head over to my YouTube site and scroll through that. There are older photos. They're probably from older videos, probably from 2020, from the beginning of the COVID lockdowns, when we really needed to start using our smartphones. Beyond that, a good iridology camera, if you're purchasing camera body, lens, and illuminator, which is the special lighting on the end, is probably going to run you, if you're in the US, between $2,500 and $4,000 US. So let me just show you the setups that I have, just reaching them out of my little drawer here to show you what I've got. And I'll give you a little bit about why I like each of these. All right. So this is just a Canon camera body. It's not quite it's an entry level. One of these days I might upgrade to a professional level, but this one does what I need it to do. So I'm happy with that. 60mm autofocus macro lens with a couple of extender tubes on it. And this is the Iris Explorer 5.1 from Matthew Dahmer at Iris Labs. He is in England or France. I think he's in England right now. I love this one because this goes right up against the face, which blocks out extraneous room light. You've got really good control of your lighting. I also love this particular version. This is his newest version because you can set it for a blast setting, which means that once you've set it up to do the eye photos and you've got this up against the client's face and you press the focus button here, that actually your shutter button, press it halfway down to get your focus. When you've got your focus, you just depress it all the way and it goes frontal lighting, right, left, frontal. So you get 4 photos literally in less than 4 seconds, right? And as long as your client is holding their eyes steady, that's great. Then you can move on to resetting your lights to get your sclera images and then come over to the other eye and redo the whole process. So I love that. Matthew's done a beautiful job on this. I love this setup in particular for my clients between the ages of about 10 or 12 and about 50 or 55. Those are the age groups where people can open their eyes really well, and they're really good at focusing instructions of where to look. Right now, with younger children and with older people younger children who don't follow instructions well, or they're trying really hard, but it's hard for them to sit still and just keep staring in one place. Their eyes are darting all over. Or for older clients who have droopy eyelids, can't open their eyes quite as wide, I swap out for this lens. So this lens and illuminator goes on my camera. This is from John Miles in California. This one does not sit against the face. So this gives lots of room for the client to get their fingers in there to prop their eye open. This is a little easier if I'm trying to get shots of maybe an infant's eyes. I can angle this all over the place really easily. And because it's not right against their face, it's that infant or that young child, it's easier for them to keep their eyes open. You run the risk of extraneous light interfering with your photo. So you need to make sure that you've got your windows covered and that you can turn off your overhead lights because they will reflect on the eyeball. Again, what I really like about both of these gentlemen is that you can buy your camera locally when it's on sale. You can buy your lens locally when it's on sale. And then you just buy the illuminator from whoever is supplying that for you. And that works out really, really well. Matthew Dahmer, of course, has his specs of what he likes to see in a camera. John Miles does as well. Matthew prefers the Canon. John Miles prefers the Nikon. And but John Miles custom built this one for my Canon. This distance had to be very particularly measured in order for it to work on my camera. So if you've got measurements, he can work with you. So those are the 2 ideas that I love for lighting. I really encourage my students to avoid buying these little $99 and $299 iriscopes where it's the thing that goes onto the eye and it connects to your computer and you click it and you have no control over how many lights there are, how bright they are. You have no control over your exposure time. They're often low resolution, anywhere from 2 to 8 megapixels, which is absolutely not enough. We're shooting 24 megapixels with these cameras now. And boy, the difference you see between 8 megapixels and 24 megapixels, the detail is amazing. I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what's coming out next in cameras. My camera's about 6 years old. It's probably due for an update, right? And that will be a lot of fun. So hopefully, Trina, that answers your question. Trina, are there any other questions about photos and cameras that you would like to ask? And so just anyone who's got a question, just go ahead and find that chat box and pop it in there. All right, so beyond that, while I'm waiting to see if anybody else, I'm not going to actually wait, let's answer more questions. This is the one I want. We're going to come back to this screen. Just as we go into more questions, the next course is starting on April 11th. Trina says, cut out for a bit. Is there a replay? Yes, Trina, you've registered for today. You'll receive the replay in your email tomorrow. Where should a newbie start? I have no nursing background. So Robin, you need an anatomy and physiology background. You need a course, a college level course, just like a 6-credit course, or 6 credit would be ideal, 3 credit if you must, in anatomy and physiology. That would be your first place to start. Without having that A&P background, you are only going to learn 1 mark equals 1 problem. So Robin, if you need a referral, if you would like a link to the A&P course that I recommend, it's self-paced, it's virtual, you can work through it. They say it takes about 84 hours to work through the course. It's a hard course. Just going to make a note here to send you the A&P link, Robin. It's a tough course. It really is. I've had some students that have wanted to take it. They've started and they've dropped out because they just couldn't do it self-motivated, right? But if you're self-motivated, if you could put in 1 hour a day, 5 days, 5 to 6 days a week, you would have it done in 2.5 months, right? Just an hour a day, just settling in and just doing it, right? And Veronica would like that link as well. And I know, Veronica, you've already got A&P, but this would be a good refresher for you as well. And so if you can be that disciplined, Robin, to work through the A&P like that on your own, my dynamic iridology program will be a piece of cake, because we meet every week for a live interactive. We've got 2 extra live mentoring sessions every month. We've got lots of real, I'm in your face. If you miss a couple of classes, I'm sending you an email saying, you need, where have you been? How are you? Is there anything I can help you with? I hope you're okay, kind of stuff. So I'm on top of it. If you can do the A&P course without that kind of support, my course will be easy, because I'm with you on this one. So Liz, I will send it to you as well. Robin says the self-paced A&P has tests, so I know what I'm doing well. Yes, there are tests. There's a final project. This is actually an A&P course through the Canadian School of Natural Nutrition. It's the A&P course that their nutrition students have to do, but they also they sell it as a standalone course as well. And so, yeah, it's something that you will be able, if you can buckle down and do it, then I know my course will be easy by comparison, right? So fantastic. So yeah, and the beauty of this A&P course is, this isn't just because I say you need it. If you want to certify as an iridologist, you will need to have proof of having completed a college level A&P course with a grade of over 80%. And that proof gets sent to the International Iridology Practitioners Association before they will complete your certification with you. Right. And that is why I've chosen this A&P course. IIPA, the International Iridology Practitioners Association, has approved this course as meeting their requirements for anatomy and physiology. Right. So you're not taking some Mickey Mouse A&P course somewhere and then discovering, oh, they only say I passed, or it didn't cover enough stuff. It wasn't good enough. It wasn't enough hours. And so that's why I picked this course, is that I've seen graduates from this course. They know their stuff. They know their stuff. And that is divine. It makes learning iridology so much easier. Yeah. So Robin, we don't Mickey Mouse this. No Mickey Mouse courses allowed. All right. So I want you to grab this URL here. Whoops. There we go. tinyurl.com/dynamic-iridology. I want you to grab that because it may be important to you in a minute. So some questions. Okay, some of these I've already sort of answered because Chana asked such a good question at the beginning. How does using iridology with my clients benefit my clients? That's really important. It's important that it benefits me, but it's more important that it benefits my clients. When I've got their photos, I've got 2 large computer screens. I'm teaching you through one of them. I pop their photos up onto my computer and we look at them. And so, we've got these big 22-inch computer screens, and I can point to a marking and I say, when I see this and this and this, this is what it teaches me about how your body is put together. That's why you have that symptom. And that means we need to do this thing first. This is the first step. And I find when I've got their eye photos like that, and I explain it step by step as to what I'm seeing, what it means to them individually, and how that's helping me understand what we need to do next, my clients love it. You know, they're so used to getting printouts of lab tests that just gives them their number and it gives them the range, but they don't know what these lab tests are, right? They often bring their lab test to me and say, what does this mean? And some of them really don't understand how to read these things. And I'm explaining their lab tests to them. They appreciate that because the doctors aren't doing that. Right. So by giving them this kind of information, it's empowering our clients to take control of their health. They're not being told, you do this, I said so. It's, this is what's going on. This is the first best thing to do. And this is why. How can we make this thing happen for you? How do we get you off coffee? How do we increase this in your diet? How do we get you 20 minutes of exercise every day, of physical activity? Avoid the word exercise. People are allergic to that word. Physical activity every day, right? So I find it helps me communicate with my clients, which means they understand what's going on. They understand the process of what they need to do, what would benefit them the most, and then they can decide to follow through with it or not, right? How does it help me in my business? This creates a really deep rapport with my clients. Now, by the time I've done an iris assessment, so they come in, it's a first appointment, they come in, hi, hello, how are you? I have them sign the release form. They never fill out a questionnaire. I find out what they would like my help with. I ask them a few basic questions. I take photos of their eyes, and then I start putting together the eyes with their issues, and we create that easy program. Because it's a simple program, they can stick with it. They want to come back and tell me what success they've had. So like 4 weeks later, they're coming back. I'm asking how to go. Oh, great. Well, I thought you thought coffee was going to be a hard one to give up. You know, I thought it was going to be hard too, but I gave it up. I feel so good. What comes next? Right? They want to know what's the next step. What are the next 2 or 3 steps? How do we keep this moving? It's moving in the right direction. So it generates repeat business and deep rapport. I have clients, they'll disappear for a few years. We get them feeling good. They disappear for a few years. And then when something is shifting, they come back to me. I've had people come back 10 years, 20 years later saying, you helped me so much before, it's done me. I've felt so good all along, but now this is shifting. I thought of you first. Yes, that's what I want. Okay. Fantastic. So just before we move on, Liz is saying, do I make my own herbs for clients? I do not yet do that. Just because that's an art unto itself. I am a master herbalist. I understand the usage of herbs. I'm just starting to get into growing my own, because there's a whole bunch of legal, not legal, political stuff that's happening here, which means that likely in Canada, in about a year from now, we will lose all access to all things natural, holistic. We will not be able to afford to buy vitamins, minerals, or herbs, right? So I've been working the last couple of years to learn how to grow my own, and I'm stocking up on some raw materials from other suppliers so that I can at least make things for my family. It will be illegal at that point in time for me to sell anything on threat of a $5 million per day fine. That's where our government is headed. So I don't make my own herbal recommendations I don't make my own herbal formulations for my clients. I will for my family, but I probably won't for my clients. Veronica's asking, any courses you would recommend to learn labs? I don't have any courses. I have studied tons on my own. I do recommend that my students rather have reference books like this one. And these come out every few years. So when you have a client that's bringing in labs, I'm not doing research specifically for that client, but I am doing research to learn about labs, right? Many of the books that I read for fun, like I'm reading one right now that is talking about the analysis of lab tests for bone and for osteoporosis. So this book is called Fishbox, A Manual of Laboratory and Diagnostic Testing. This isn't bedtime reading, it's a reference book, right? So that's how I have learned lab tests. I also attend a lot of webinars by different suppliers, and they're often taught by medical doctors or naturopaths. Here in Canada, naturopaths are different than they are in many of the states. Here, they are on par with medical doctors, except that they don't have hospital privileges, right? And so they have to pass board exams that are provincially regulated in order to practice. And so a lot of them will teach these classes, and I attend them and learn more and more about labs. So getting back to iridology, there are a lot of different schools of thought when it comes to iridology. Which ones have I studied? Well, I've studied the Bernard Jensen style. That's what I did for 10 years at the beginning. I've studied RAID, which was the original emotional iridology founded by Denny Johnson. He is still around teaching. And I've studied iridology with Harry Wolff and Bill Caradona, and they were the gentlemen who brought constitutional iridology to North America starting in the late 70s. And when I was blessed to cross paths with them and study what they were teaching, it just resonated. It so worked for me. And that is where I have landed. Constitutional iridology, which is what I base the dynamic iridology program on, is all about understanding what the eyes teaches about how a person is put together. And so the eyes give us the constitution, tell us where the strengths and weaknesses are. The symptoms tell us which weaknesses, especially the weaknesses, are being activated. And that's what teaches us what questions to ask. And that then guides us into protocol recommendations that, again, will be based on the different modalities that you have under your belt already. Why is Canada removing access to herbs and nutritional supplements? Oh, Trina, you really want me to get political here? Because we have a prime minister who believes that the best way to maintain control and power is by keeping everybody poor and sick. And he's absolutely right. That's how dictators get control, right? And so they've passed some laws that go into effect in April 2025 that will subject all nutritional and holistic supplements to the same tariffs and fees that pharmaceuticals are subject to, which will price holistic things out of the market, and we will lose access. So we're in the process now, at least for our family, of stocking up on what we think we will need. There's a battle going on. We've got a lawyer who knows well the way the government works, and we are fighting to get those laws repealed, but it will probably take us 2 or 3 or 4 years. So there'll be a few years where we don't have access to anything. So I'm just stocking up for my family, and we'll see how that goes. Liz, how are lacunas and crypts different? That's beyond the scope of what we're doing today, since today we're on the business of and the learning of, as opposed to the technical side of. So we'll save that one for maybe another day. We totally answer that in the dynamic iridology course as well. Which styles of iridology do I use with my clients, and why do I choose them? Again, primarily constitutional, a little bit of the RAID. RAID has developed a lot since I did my coursework in it decades ago, but primarily the constitutional. The RAID is helpful because it helps me to understand my clients' personality traits. And when I understand their personality traits, I am better able to communicate with them and to understand what they will and won't do, right? And so important to understand those traits and to understand those communication skills. How do I include iridology in a client session? Iridology, actually, as I mentioned earlier, is a part of my intake process. So for example, again, client comes in for the first time, or maybe I haven't seen them in a little while. Maybe it's been over a year. I like to reshoot photos about every year, not because the iris changes rapidly. The iris will change under genetic influence, but the sclera will change the most, right? And so I do like to redo their iris photos about once a year. And regardless of whether it's their first appointment or their 10th appointment, if I haven't done photos in a year or so, I will reshoot them. So they come in, we greet them, get them comfortable. If it's been over a year, I have them sign a new release form, ask them what they would like my help with because their health goals have possibly changed since our last meeting, and find out if there's been any changes to their medications, to surgeries, to any major changes in their lifestyle. Then I'm going to reshoot their photos, and I'm going to let the photos guide the process. So client has given me, again, their symptom, the thing that they want resolved. I'm going to use the photos to guide the questions I ask so that I can understand what's going on and the pathways that are being involved. And then from there, I'm going to build their protocol. And the protocol is never more than maybe 2 or 3 supplements and maybe 1 or 2 dietary recommendations and maybe 1 lifestyle recommendation. Right? I keep things really focused, really simple, really measurable, because I want to be able to tell my client, in doing these changes, in doing these, in implementing these recommendations, I expect to see these kinds of changes in your symptoms. So I've given them something to watch for. And then we make sure we schedule for their next appointment about a month away, depending on what we're working on. And when they come back for that 1 month check-in, I'm asking, how did you do with the things we suggested? I never expect 100% compliance. I expect about 80%. And sometimes they're 100% on some things, and sometimes they're 0% on other things. How human of them. I'm okay with that. It just means we need to reconfigure that thing that they struggled with to make it something that they can actually do. But I always, always, always pat them on the back for all the good they've done, all the wonderful changes they've done, the consistency that they've implemented, and things that they were not successful with. I want to understand why they weren't. It's never, that's just rotten, you lazy slug. How could you do that? Never. It's okay. So tell me why this was a challenge for you. What was going on that made this difficult, so we can find another approach that would accomplish the same thing, that would be more manageable for you right now. So I'm never telling them that they're losers in any way, shape, or form. I'm always acknowledging the good they've done, the challenges they've had, and even with the challenges, the successes they've had amidst those challenges, and then recognizing things that we maybe need to rejig a little bit. Everybody has a different capability. I've had some people where I gave them 2 things that I thought were very small to do, but because of where they were in their life, those 2 things were overwhelming. And we had to back it way down to get them to where they could actually do it. And I get it. We all have times like that in our life. So that's how I include iridology in the session. When we have follow-up appointments, I bring up their most recent photos. I have them on my computer screens when they come into the office. And we're talking about what successes did you have? What challenges did you have? What results are you seeing? And with considering all of that in light of their eye photos, I'm able then to slightly rejig their program, add a supplement, change a recommendation, build on what we've already done, so that we can use those photos for about a year before we need to reshoot. Right? And you can seriously, as their symptoms change, as they see improvement, your assessment of that very same eye photo will begin to shift as well, right? Because it's a new understanding. How do I market iridology as a service? I market it as a way for us to assess, a non-interventive, very fast way for us to assess where imbalances could be in their body, and for us to understand what those imbalances might be, right? It's not diagnostic. I am not legally able to diagnose. Diagnose means naming a disease. We can't name a disease from an iris photo. I'm not allowed to prescribe. I can't say this thing that we are doing will cure you. That's totally illegal. But I can say, as I've said earlier, your symptoms and these iris signs give us this understanding. So I market iridology as a way for us to understand at a deeper level what's going on in their body. And if they've got lab tests to back it up, that's even stronger. If they bring in unbalanced triglycerides, elevated triglycerides and elevated cholesterol, and I see things in their eyes that make me think, oh yeah, we are definitely pushing towards type 2 diabetes, I'll send them back to their doctor for a hemoglobin A1C, and it will always come back elevated. And then, we've already started working on that in the first appointment because that's what I suspected. But they bring back those lab tests and I go, yep, I gotcha. That is what I suspected, but we needed to see these. Your doctor needed to see this to say you're headed towards type 2 diabetes. We suspected it. We're working on it already. Keep up the good work, right? So I market this as an assessment tool that gives us deeper understanding. Now, it's really important to remember that most of your clients won't have a clue what iridology is. They come into your office and they're not going to know. They're not even going to know you do it. So you're going to have to explain it as the irides teach us about your genetic predispositions, things that have been handed down from the last 3 to 4 generations. Your sclera tell us what you're doing with that. And that it'll just help us to understand more what's going on so that we can be more effective in program creation. Why do I love constitutional iridology? I love it because it is based in science. It is based in science. I love it because there's research continuing in it, and our training is constantly being updated. And I don't mean like every 10 minutes, but every few years, someone will have done a really good study and they've given it to us and we go, oh, well, that kind of shifts what we know. And we are able to then update what we're teaching and how we're using it. With the old Jensenian style, it was cast in stone, but it was based on some unproven theories, right? And that's why I found it didn't work. Constitutional, because there is ongoing research. If something's not working perfectly and there's research going on and we get that research, we can shift what we're doing. We're not locked into a set paradigm, pardon the French, come hell or high water, right? We are able to adjust to the new research. Science is, when we say science, based in science, follow the science. We've heard that so much, we all want to go, right? None of us believe that kind of science. Science is not the art of answering questions. Science is not the art of pushing misinformation down our throats. Science is the art of asking questions and then searching and researching to find the answers, the most correct answers, knowing that those most correct answers may be proven incorrect at a future date when better research is done, right? The quality of research should constantly be increasing, and our knowledge should constantly be being corrected and refined. And that's why I love this. I also love constitutional. I had experiences with Jensenian, with instructors that were very off-putting. My main constitutional instructor was Bill Caradonna, and I have to tell you, I absolutely adore him. I certified under him in 1993. He was my instructor for my, back then, before IPA was IPA, it was NIRA, National Iridology Research Association. And what I love is my Jensen instructors would tell me, they wouldn't say, I don't know. They would say, I don't see what you're looking at. I don't know what you're talking about. With Bill, when I would ask a tough question, he would think about it and process it. He was a pharmacist back then. He's now a naturopath, has been for 25 years. And he would think about it, and then he would get back to me with an answer. And even now, I just sent him a question a couple of weeks ago, and I said, Bill, it's been on my mind. I need to ask you this. He got back to me with an answer, right? And it's never, I don't know, it's always well, in my clinical experience as a naturopath, this is what I've seen, or this is what that means. This is how you want to work with this. And so I love that there's not only ongoing research, but I have ongoing support, right? And that is why I offer my students ongoing support as well. That's why we do extra mentoring sessions twice a month, things like that, to make sure they've got the support they need. How do you find a good iridology instructor? Well, you take my class. Now, I mean, okay, seriously, you take my class. But what you really want to do here is you want to see examples of how they teach, which is a part of the reason why I do these sessions. You want to see how they teach. Does it resonate with you? Do they answer questions? Do they encourage engagement? Is their whole course completely pre-recorded and you just have to tough it through and do it on your own? Iridology, there are so many nuances that cannot be taught in a recording, that can only be taught by a student asking a question, right? Or presenting a case that has a particular angle. So you also want to make sure that whoever you want to use is not teaching fluff. You want to make sure that they are certified as an iridology instructor, but you want to know, who are they certified by? What is that certification process? That's why I love IPA, is because they don't teach courses, right? You do your training with whoever your teacher is, and hopefully your teacher is using the IPA curriculum, which I do. And then you apply to IPA to take their final certification exam. And so, if your teacher is teaching you and then is certifying you, you're meeting that teacher's requirements. But what are that teacher's standards? Does that make sense? I can certify you. I can give you a certificate calling you certified, but that's just my standards. I think it's far more powerful to have another organization do a certifying. So I think that's important. Who certified your teacher and who will certify you? What are the standards for certification? What is the process for certification? So you want to make sure you ask those questions. If it's a weekend course, I guarantee you it's not going to take you where you want it to go. You're learning one mark equals one thing. That is not a clinical approach. That's a party game. Can iridology be learned well without a face-to-face course? So some students say, well, I learn best if I'm right in the classroom. I am going to say that that's a really hard way to learn iridology for a few reasons. Number one, for my course, that would be jamming 45 hours into, say, a week, 6 or 7 or 8 days, where you're doing iridology for 6 or 7 hours every day for all those days. You're limited then by the number of students in the classroom for your exposure to different eyes, realistically, for practicing on them. And you may be doing cases within the class, like working on other students in the class, but does the teacher have time to check your assessments and your evaluations every time on all of those right then and there? Not likely. So I think really the best way to learn it is not by dumping you into boiling oil into a total immersion class. There's so much to learn. I think it is far better learned in small pieces, which is why I teach dynamic iridology the way I do. It's 20 weeks long. We meet for about 2.25 to 2.5 hours each week, introduce a new concept, really dive into it, give you the week to practice it, to do a quiz or two on it, to really get into it. And then we come back the next week and we build on that foundation. I want you to practice and study and work with it so that you can bring questions to our next class of what didn't line up for you? What were your challenges in applying this? Let's get those straightened out before we build on things, right? So important. So I think face-to-face is not the strongest way. I think a paced out course where you learn a little bit every week is a much stronger way. What support is there after training for business questions and help with difficult cases? Now, hey, Liz, good to see you. Thank you for being here. You can catch the rest of this on the replay. So I don't know what other teachers offer. I only know what I offer. When my students have enrolled in in dynamic iridology, while they're enrolled, they certainly have access to our private MeWe group and to our twice a month mentoring sessions. And after they have completed the coursework, whether they certify or not, they continue to have access to our MeWe platform and to our extra mentoring sessions. And that will go on for them for as long as I am teaching. I'm not planning on quitting soon, but it's nice to know that you've got ongoing support. I mean, I am grateful to Bill Cardona that he is still there for me 30 years after I studied with him. And I do my best to offer that same kind of support to my students, even after they've graduated and completed the work. Is it important to get certified? What does it mean to be certified? So is it important? That really depends on you. For some of my students, it's absolutely important. That certification is a completion marker. I did this, yay, right? Now it's done. Some of my students don't need that. They just want the information. So your clients probably don't care if you're certified or not. They probably don't really know enough about the process to realize that it could be quite valuable. Most of them are intrigued with iridology, but they will almost never ask for your credentials. So it's important to note that with certification, there is no government recognition of your certification. You are recognized by the organization, and it is not a government regulated board. So that's really important. If you are using iridology in a clinical setting, you have errors and omissions insurance for the work you already do with, say, nutrition or herbology or massage or whatever it is you're doing, you may need to be certified as an iridologist to have that added to your errors and omissions insurance. So you want to ask your insuring company about that. Other than that, it really is just up to you. There is no right answer or no wrong answer for, is it important to be certified? That is a very personal decision. I do encourage all of my students to, of course, complete the coursework and do all the case study work, right? That's really, I think, important. And, if you finish the case studies, you might as well go and get certified. One more step, get it done. And then you've got it, right? You've got it for at least the next 2 years kind of thing, because it is something you need to renew. What does it take to be successful as an iridologist? Well, you've got to study. You need to have that A&P before you come into my course. There are a lot of teachers who will take you without A&P, but they can't teach you at a deep clinical level. And I know that because I've had some of them come to me and enroll in my course. They're certified elsewhere. Some of them are even IPA certified, but they weren't taught how to actually use it. They were taught the nuts and bolts, but not the practical application. So, and that's what I work with my students on. That's why we have the extra mentorings, because I want to make sure they've got the application. So success, study hard, be able to take correction and coaching and mentoring, continue learning, be willing to learn new concepts and let go of old concepts. As we have more research coming through, we need to be willing to walk away from things that are not correct. We need to be able to explain things in plain English or whatever your native tongue is. I know we've got someone here from Czechoslovakia, so we've got a couple of people with us where English is their second language. So be able to explain things clearly in the language of your clientele. Really helpful to have other modalities, again, because just because you understand what's wrong doesn't mean you're going to do a lot of good unless you can make recommendations for how to bring things into balance. Really important to have a modality. Again, herbology and nutrition, homeopathy, they work the best. Aromatherapy can work as well. All right, so important. How can we take our practice from a paid by the hour financially limiting business to a business that does not have an income cap? So I really love my clinical work. I love the work I do with my clients one-on-one. I'm a little bit picky about who I take on as a client nowadays, just because I've been around long enough that I don't have to take everybody that comes my way. That is a one-to-one kind of piece of work. It does, however, It pays fairly well when I'm doing it, so that's good. A lot of my students also are affiliated with different nutrition product lines or supplement product lines, and that's carrying those products in their clinical setting and selling them at a profit is absolutely an acceptable way to augment your income. And Nature Sunshine Products is an excellent company for doing that. I've been with them since 1979. And they are set up to be supportive of the kind of work we do. And so I can actually give my clients a link that allows them to set up an account where they can purchase products at a discount, but I earn commissions on that. So that's really handy. And their product is delivered from the warehouse. So that's another way to augment your income. Of course, come this time next year, it may not be available to me in Canada anymore, at least for a few years, but for now it still is. Can I make a living doing iridology? Yeah, you can, if you have a modality that works well with it. I've had people come to me that have studied iridology with different instructors, but they don't have a modality. And they come and say, how do I turn this into a business? Well, you don't. I hate to break it to you, but you don't. Because there's no sense in knowing how to tell somebody what's out of balance if you cannot tell them how to bring it back into balance. So, you need something. You need the herbology, or you need the nutrition. You need something to help teach them how to bring it back into balance, because otherwise it's like the mechanic that has all the tools. He can diagnose what's wrong with your car, but he can't fix it. He doesn't fix cars. He just diagnoses the problem. If you want your car fixed, you got to take it to Jim down the road. He's got the equipment to fix it. He can't diagnose, but I'll tell him what to fix and he'll fix it for you. Right? That makes no sense. You wouldn't do that with your car, right? You want to take it in, get it assessed, get it fixed. That's what your clients want to. When I'm trained up, how will I know how much to charge? That is a great question. That is going to depend on your other training, what other skills you have to offer, and it's going to depend on your local economy, right? If you live in an area that is very depressed economically, you might be charging $75 or $80 an hour, and you should be able to do a session in an hour. Then if you're selling supplements, that's over and above. Where I am, with my years of training and my expertise, I have no problems charging $180 an hour. The clients who are willing to pay that are my clients. The clients who think that's too expensive, well, they'll go somewhere else, right? And so IPA suggests that you should be charging whatever the going rate is for a 1-hour massage, and I am above that by a bit. So you have to experiment with your own economy to see what actually will work for you. After I finish the training, where can I go to get business mentoring and help with difficult cases? Where can I go if I have questions? Again, most teachers, when you finish the course, it's like slam the door shut, you're on your own, I'm on to my next students, and it does not include you. I disagree with that 100%. This is why I offer my students, it's included in their tuition, the lifetime of mentoring, the long-term mentoring. For as long as I'm teaching, they will be welcome to come into my mentoring sessions, right? And that's where you can ask those tough business questions. How do I market? How do I set this up? We can talk more about cameras. We can talk more about how to get good photos with your cameras. It's just because you've got good equipment doesn't mean you're going to get good photos, right? Practice the photos. You might be working with a difficult case that you want some input on. That all comes back to our mentoring sessions and our MeWe group. Long-term. Other iridologists that have, again, they've been certified, they've been trained elsewhere, they're coming to me because they don't have that kind of support. There are other teachers have said, yep, you'll figure that out on your own. I don't teach you that. I think that's wrong. That's just my opinion. And so that's why I offer that long-term support. So when you're looking for an instructor, make sure you ask, after the course is done, can I come back to you with questions? Right? And if they say no, then maybe that's not the instructor you want. If I become an iridologist, do I have to buy an expensive camera? So I want to go back to the mechanics analogy. If you go to take your car to a mechanic, and that mechanic doesn't have the basic tools to do the job, are you going to be impressed enough to keep taking your car back to him? So I encourage my students, yes, to buy professional equipment, but not to buy it until after they've completed their course. Do the course, learn the iridology well, be very comfortable with it, be using it in your practice. I want you to start using iridology literally after your second lesson with me. You should be incorporating what you've learned with your very next clients, right? So that by the time you're at the end of the course, you're really comfortable. You've figured out your rhythm with doing iridology. I encourage my students then to literally, out of every session they do where they've done some iridology, take $10 out of that fee that they charge their clients, stick it in a jar, start saving up. By the end of the course, you might have enough money to buy your camera equipment without going into debt. That's a sweet place. If you decide you don't want to buy equipment, well, you now have a nest egg. What do you want to do? Invest that for retirement, go on a vacation. Maybe you need a new appliance in the kitchen, whatever, it doesn't matter, but you've saved up the money, which means buying your equipment is not going to hurt. I also like to use, I've got a mini photo printer. It's a little Canon selfie, and I will often print up a left eye and a right eye from each client and I'll put a little sticker on the back that has my contact information on it. And I'll give that to them at the end of their appointment. And they take that and, sometimes we'll draw on it and point out different markers that we've talked about. It's funny, sometimes they bring those back like 5 years later saying, hey, look what I found in the drawer, or I've been looking at these again. Can we do new photos? I want to see what's going on. So that's a lot of fun to do that. But do you have to buy an expensive camera? Not at the outset. In fact, if I find you buying a camera before you finish the course, I will have your address. I'm looking for a reason for a road trip. I'm going to show up on your doorstep. I'm going to say, what were you thinking? Right? Don't do that. Wait till you're trained, till you know you love it. Until then, do your photos with your smartphone. Look in your client's eyes with your pen light and magnifying glass, right? Keep it simple. So again, the next class is starting on April 11th. If this has intrigued you and you're thinking, I really want to know more about this course, I invite you to use that URL. Oh, is that really the one I want you to be using? Just let me double check this one super quick to make sure it's the right one. Yes, that is a good URL. Thank you. So there it is in the chat box. Did I send that to the right group? No, I should have sent that to attendees, to everyone. Let's change that. There we go. There we go. Book a call and let's talk about it. Let's see if this is the right fit for you. Right? See if it's the right fit, if it's the right time. Is this actually what you're looking for? For those of you who've requested the A&P link, I will send that out privately today. It'll come in an email from my personal email. So just watch for Judith at cobblestonehealth.com. And otherwise, I'm not seeing any other questions come in. Are there any other questions? Anything else that you would like to have answered? This is a really safe way to do this. Okay. And I'm just going to make a note of this. Robin, thanks for that. Appreciate that. I will make sure that gets out to you. And I've got everybody else's, and I can grab your email addresses off your registration from this event today as well. So again, schedule a time to talk, even if you think, well, I don't think I've got the right qualifications. If you want to talk with me to see if you do, or to see what you need to do next to be ready to take this course, then let's talk. Let's see what we can do. And if you are able, where are we at? February, March, April. If you are willing to put in 2 hours a day on the A&P, if you need A&P, you could be ready for the April course. You absolutely could, right? So with that, my friends, I hope that was useful to you. We went a little longer than I had anticipated, but lots of questions that I think needed answering. And yeah, and from there, I hope you have an absolutely brilliant week. Watch your email for the replay. and we will talk to you soon. Bye for now.